It was late. Not the kind of late when the world is asleep, but that fragile in-between hour when the streetlights buzz too loudly and shadows seem closer than they should be. I stood at her door, hands still hovering near the wood, heart hammering harder than the knock I'd just given. I told myself it was nothing, that I was only here because she mentioned the leak in her kitchen last week, because I happened to have the tools, because I had nothing better to do. Lies. All of them. When the door opened, she leaned against the frame like she hadn't expected me. Hair loose around her shoulders, eyes tired but sharp. She must have been in her late 40s, maybe a little younger. But time had done something beautiful to her. Something honest. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Why are you here?" I swallowed, caught between the truth and what I thought I should say. Finally, it came out raw, unpolished. "Because you called me without words." A silence stretched, the kind that makes air heavy. She looked at me the way people do when they're searching for something they shouldn't be hoping to find. "Don't," she said, softer this time. "I shouldn't be doing this." The corner of my mouth lifted before I could stop it. "Neither should I." That earned me a look. Not anger, not surprise, something in between. She stepped back just enough for me to follow. I shouldn't have. I did. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and rain-damp wood. The kitchen light flickered, buzzing overhead like it had secrets of its own. She set down the mug she must have been holding before I arrived, the rim still wet. I put my tools on the counter, a clumsy excuse for being here. "The leak," I muttered, pointing at the sink. My hands shook more than they should have. She folded her arms, watching. Not suspicious, not annoyed, just watching, like she wanted to see what I'd do next. My chest tightened under the weight of it. I crouched, fiddling with pipes I'd barely looked at. Every scrape of metal echoed louder than it should, filling the room with noise that wasn't enough to drown out her presence. "Do you always fix things that aren't yours?" she asked after a while. Her tone was casual, but her eyes weren't. "Only when someone leaves the door unlocked," I said. A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips, gone before I could be sure it was real. She turned, leaning against the counter, her sleeve brushing the edge of my shoulder as she did. That tiny contact, the brush of fabric, was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. I froze. She didn't move. The clock on the wall ticked unevenly, like even time didn't know what to do with us. I finished tightening a pipe that didn't need tightening, then pushed myself up to stand. Too close now. Closer than I should have been. Her eyes flicked to my face, then away, then back again. A rhythm of hesitation. She cleared her throat, but no words followed. I should have stepped back. I didn't. Her hand reached for the mug on the counter, fingers brushing mine instead. Neither of us pulled away. That's when she looked at me fully, no shield, no distance. And the silence between us wasn't empty anymore. Her words, "If you stay, something will change," hung between us like a line neither of us should cross. I should have laughed it off, turned the moment into nothing. But her eyes wouldn't let me. They were sharp and tired all at once, the kind of eyes that had seen too much and still didn't let go. "This is a bad idea," she said, almost to herself. She pulled her hand back from mine, wrapping her arms around her chest like armor. I nodded, but I didn't move. "Yeah," I whispered. "It is." Silence again, the kind that made every sound in the house louder. The faint drip in the sink, the hum of the refrigerator, the uneven tick of the clock. I felt like an intruder in her life, but also like I was exactly where I needed to be. She exhaled slowly, glancing at the kitchen window, where rain streaked the glass. "You're too young to understand what this would mean." Her words cut. Not harsh, but defensive, as though she was trying to convince herself more than me. "I'm not a kid," I said, too quickly, too firm. That got her to look at me again. Her gaze lingered on my face, maybe noticing how tense my jaw was, maybe noticing the way my hand still rested on the counter near hers. She shook her head, softening. "It's not about that." It's about me. I'm not ready. Her voice caught, and there it was, the first crack in her composure. Vulnerability slipping through. I wanted to ask, not ready for what? But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, every muscle caught between stepping back and leaning closer. And then I noticed the details, the chipped nail polish on her fingers, the way one curl of hair clung stubbornly to her cheek, the faint outline of tired circles under her eyes. Small things, but each one pulled me in deeper, made her feel impossibly real. "Why did you open the door then?" I asked quietly. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer right away. She looked down, brushed at that loose strand of hair, buying herself time. Finally, she said, "Because I thought I could handle it. But you standing here..." Her voice trailed off. I wanted to tell her that I hadn't come here with a plan, that I was just as caught in the pull as she was. Instead, I swallowed the words. The rain outside hit harder against the glass, like the night was closing in tighter. She rubbed her arms as though the kitchen had grown colder. "You should probably go," she whispered. I took a step back, ready to obey, but then she reached out without thinking, fingers brushing my arm, stopping me. "Stay," she said, softer than before. "Just a little longer." The touch burned through me. Not painful, but impossible to ignore. And for the first time I realized, leaving might be harder than staying. Her question lingered. "Do you ever regret things you didn't do?" I froze because the answer was already at the edge of my lips. Every day. But I bit it back, forcing myself to smile like it was nothing. "Sometimes," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She studied me like she could hear what I didn't say. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, and the silence that followed was heavier than any noise could have been. Her hand was still on my arm. Too natural, too dangerous. I should have stepped back, broken the moment, but instead I let it stay. Her touch was soft, absent-minded almost, but it carried weight. "You're making this harder," she whispered. I didn't answer, couldn't, because in her eyes, I saw something raw, loneliness she hadn't meant to show. And then the sharp ring of her phone shattered it. We both jumped. She pulled her hand back quickly, fumbling for the device on the counter. Her voice steadied as she answered, "Hello," but her eyes flicked to me as she spoke. I caught fragments of the conversation. A friend checking in, someone asking if she was okay. She laughed once, short, unconvincing, and assured them she was fine. But her posture told me otherwise. When she hung up, the silence returned, thicker now, filled with everything neither of us had said. "You should really go," she murmured, though her body didn't move to show me out. I nodded. "Yeah, probably." But I stayed. My feet refused to shift, as if the floor itself wanted me planted here. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed again. Guarded. "You don't understand what people would say, what they'd think." "I don't care what they think," I said, too fast. She blinked, caught off guard by the sharpness of it. I exhaled, softer this time. "I just don't want to leave yet." For a long moment we said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached for her mug again. When her fingers brushed mine, accidental, maybe not, I didn't move away. The warmth of her skin lit through me, and the longer we stayed like that, the harder it became to pretend it meant nothing. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, voice trembling at the edges. "You don't have to," I whispered. The air between us pulsed with possibility. A thread pulled tighter with every second. I could feel my own restraint unraveling, my chest rising too quickly, my eyes locked on hers longer than I should have let them. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, the storm pushing closer. Inside, the storm was already here. And then she said it, the words that blurred the last of the lines. "Tell me why you really came tonight. Tell me why you really came tonight." Her voice wasn't demanding. It was fragile, almost afraid of the answer. I swallowed hard, Every excuse I'd rehearsed in my head suddenly useless. The tools on the counter, the leaky sink, the timing, all of it crumbled under her gaze. "I don't know," I said at first. Too weak, too safe. But the truth clawed its way out anyway. "I couldn't stop thinking about you." Her lips parted slightly, as if the words had struck deeper than she expected. She blinked once, twice, but didn't speak. "I know I shouldn't," I went on, voice low, each word heavier than the last. "I know this is wrong, but every time I try to stay away, I end up here again, standing at your door, telling myself I'm just helping, when I'm not." Her breath caught. A faint tremor rippled through her hands, which she quickly hid by folding her arms. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I do," I said firmly. "Maybe more than you think." The storm outside cracked open, thunder shaking the window panes. For a moment, neither of us moved, caught in the storm inside the kitchen instead. She turned away, pressing her palms flat on the counter as if steadying herself. "You think this is simple? That you can just walk in here, say things like that, and leave me to deal with what it stirs up?" Her back was to me, but her voice carried the sharp edge of something raw. Anger, fear, maybe both. I took a step closer, my own restraint fraying. "I'm not leaving you with it. I feel it too." Her shoulders stiffened. Slowly, she turned, and our eyes locked again. Whatever wall she'd built between us, I could see the cracks spreading. "You're too young," she whispered, though it sounded more like a plea than a fact. "Maybe, but I'm here." Her jaw trembled, her eyes shining under the dim light. She shook her head, but didn't step back when I closed the distance. The space between us was dangerous now, alive with everything we hadn't said until tonight. My pulse roared in my ears, and I could see her struggling, fighting something inside herself. Finally, she let out a shaky laugh, brittle, pained. "Do you have any idea what people would call me? What they'd call us?" "I don't care," I said, almost too harsh, then softened. "I only care about what's happening right here." For a long moment we just stood there, the storm pressing against the windows, our silence pressing harder inside the room. Her breath brushed my cheek when she finally whispered, "If we cross this line, there's no going back." Her warning, "If we cross this line, there's no going back," still lingered in the air when she stepped away suddenly, her face pale. For a moment, I thought I'd pushed too far. But then she said something I didn't expect. "You remind me of him." The words cut through the storm louder than thunder. I frowned. "Of who?" She pressed her fingers to her temple, shaking her head like she regretted saying it. "Someone I shouldn't even mention." I stayed still, careful. "Tell me." Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide, conflicted. But then she exhaled and gave in. "When I was your age, I had someone. He wanted me the way you do. I walked away because I was afraid. And I've spent years wondering if that was the moment I ruined everything." The confession hit me harder than I expected. My chest tightened, and for the first time, I understood why her guard had been so high. "So when you look at me," I started, voice rough. She finished for me. "I see the chance I lost." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with ghosts. I tried to pull back, force some distance. But my heart didn't listen. "I'm not him. I'm here now." Her lips parted, trembling as if she wanted to answer. But before she could, the knock came. Sharp, urgent, at the front door. She flinched, nearly dropping her mug. "Damn it!" I froze, pulse spiking. The sound came again, louder this time. Whoever it was, they weren't leaving. She looked at me with panic flickering in her eyes. "You can't be seen here." "Who is it?" I whispered. "My sister," she said quickly, already moving toward the hallway. "She doesn't know. She can't know." The urgency in her tone made my heart pound harder than any confession could. She gestured frantically. "Go out the back now." I should have listened. I should have left. But my feet stayed rooted. Please, she hissed. I can't explain this. The knock turned into the rattle of the doorknob. My chest heaved. If her sister walked in right now, everything would unravel. I'll go, I finally said, though the words tore at me. But before I moved, she grabbed my wrist, her grip tight, desperate. Wait. Her eyes locked on mine wide, searching, raw. I don't want you to disappear like he did. The weight of that admission, the crack in her armor, the plea beneath it, shifted everything between us. The door rattled again. Her sister's voice rang out, sharp and impatient. I know you're in there. We both froze, her hand still clutching mine. Our bodies caught between exposure and surrender. Her sister's voice echoed through the door again, sharp and insistent. Every second felt stolen, every breath too loud. But she wouldn't let go of my wrist. Her grip was firm, trembling with a mix of panic and something deeper. Tell me you'll come back, she whispered. The words lodged in my chest. I wanted to promise her everything, right then and there. But promises like that carried weight, and weight was dangerous. I will, I said. My voice was low, certain, but beneath it, I knew it wasn't just reassurance. It was truth. Her hand loosened, sliding down my arm until her fingers brushed my palm. The touch was fleeting but enough to anchor me. Go, she urged, though her eyes betrayed her words. They begged me to stay. I turned toward the back door, heart pounding. But just before I stepped away, I heard myself say what I'd been holding back for nights like this. For all the times I stood outside her door without knocking. I didn't come here to fix your sink. I came because I can't stop thinking about you. And I don't know what that makes me, but it's the truth. Her breath hitched, the sound almost lost under the storm rattling the windows. You shouldn't say things like that, she murmured, voice breaking. Because I'll believe them. I looked back at her then, rain-streaked light from the window cutting across her face. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not the regret, not the fear, not the longing. Maybe you should, I said softly. For a moment, the world outside didn't matter. Not the storm, not the knocks at the door. Just her, standing there with the walls around her finally crumbling. Her sister called again, louder this time, irritation rising. She flinched but didn't move. We don't have time, she said almost to herself. Then, more certain, but I don't want this to end in silence. I stepped closer, closing the distance until I could feel the heat of her breath. My words came out raw, unpolished. Then don't let it. Her eyes glistened, searching mine like she was deciding whether to leap or retreat. And then, finally, she let go of the hesitation that had been holding her hostage. She reached up, fingertips grazing my cheek, tentative but steady. This is insane, she whispered. Yeah, I breathed. But so am I. The storm roared. Her sister's voice pressed harder from the front door. But in that kitchen, in that single stolen moment, the noise faded. Her hand lingered against my face, and for the first time, neither of us tried to pull back. The storm softened to a steady drizzle, but inside the kitchen, everything still felt charged. Her hand was warm against my face, her sister's voice fading into muffled frustration at the front door. We can't keep pretending this isn't real, I said quietly. She closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath, her thumb brushing my cheek like she was memorizing the shape of me. When she opened them again, there was no wall left between us, just honesty. I've spent years shutting doors I should have opened, she whispered, living with regrets instead of risks. But standing here with you, I don't want to add another one. The words sank deep, dissolving the last of my doubts. You won't, I promised. Her lips curved, not into a full smile, but into something softer, more vulnerable. She let her hand fall, but not before lacing her fingers briefly with mine. It wasn't grand, not a sweeping declaration. It was better, quiet, grounded, real. From the front, her sister called one last time before footsteps retreated down the porch. Relief flickered across her face. "She'll be back," she said, almost apologetic. "Then we'll figure it out," I replied. She blinked, surprised by the certainty in my voice. Then she let out a breath that almost sounded like laughter. "You don't even know what you're signing up for." I shrugged, stepping closer again. "Maybe not, but I know I'd regret walking away more than anything else." For the first time, she didn't argue. Instead, she leaned into me, resting her forehead lightly against my chest. The storm outside quieted, as if the world itself exhaled. We didn't need perfect words or grand gestures. We just stood there, two flawed people who had finally stopped running from the truth. And in that stillness, I realized, it wasn't about the danger or the taboo or the fear of what others might say. It was about the way she made me feel seen, and the way she, after years of regret, finally allowed herself to be seen too. This wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't neat or easy, but it was real. And for both of us, that was enough.